Okay, Tov, Shavuot Tov. Today's daf is daf Ayin Zayin in Zbachim. As we learned for Chinukah Beis Yisrael and Sumas Rav Shivya, we learned for Shlema from Moshe Yaakov ben Chanasheva. Says the Mishnah on daf Ayin Zayin, Evari chatas shenesavar bevara ola. Let's say you've already slaughtered a chatas and an ola animal. Ola, of course, the dam is sprinkled below the chut. The sick of the chatas is above. So what do? They're mixed up now. The limbs are mixed up. Now here's the halacha. The chatos limbs, what do you do with the chatos limbs? They're eaten by the Kohanim. Kohanim skorim, right? The ola limbs have to be totally burnt, right? Well, one solution is, okay, so the Kohanim can be mevater. They can waiver their right to eat it and just burn the whole thing. Can't do that. We had on yesterday's daf, actually Rashi mentioned it, we're going to have it many times here in the Gemara, that we have a drasha. The pasuk says in Vayikra, Perek Beis, Pasuk Yud Aleph and Yud Bez, it says, Kol mincha shetigivul Hashem lo saseh chametz, ki chol sor v'chol dvash, all saor, all dvash. What do you mean? That lo saktirim menu yishil Hashem. You're not supposed to burn that on the mizbeach. And from the extra word mimenu, they darshaned that kol shimenu mizbeach, anything that's burnt on the mizbeach, every carbon, you burn something on the mizbeach. If it's not a mincha, well, even if it's in a mincha, almost every carbon you burn some mizbeach. If it's a regular animal, besides the blood that's sprinkled on his back, the emurim, the fatty parts, right, the kidneys and the lobe over the liver, etc., that stuff is burnt on the mizbeach. Whatever is burnt on the mizbeach, you can't burn anymore. The same thing with a carbon mincha. Carbon mincha, you take the kometz with the Kohen's right hand, takes the fistful, burns that on the mizbeach, can't burn the rest of it. That's what the pasuk says. Kol saor. Saor refers to the shtei alechem that they bring on Shavuos, right? That is supposed to be, that's a carbon mincha. Only that. The chol dvash, that refers to the sheva min and the bikurim. Lo sakim menu Hashem. In other words, you can't burn that on mizbeach. And for the next word, mimenu they darshan, we had it in yesterday's darshan sheminei. Lo sakiru kol shemenu Hashem. Anything, any carbon where you burn something where the Torah says burn this on the mizbeach, can't burn anything else. Only that. Because the word menu is extra. How many Yiseiru, said Rashi? It's an extra word. But Dashin and Beinami, lo saktiru kol menu. Anything where you burn something on the mizbech, not supposed to burn anymore. So technically, a carbon chatos, right, where you sprinkled on the four corners of the mizbech, and you burned a murim on the mizbech, you burn them on the mizbech, you can't burn the meat. The meat's supposed to be eaten by the Kohen. So what do you do now? Now you have limbs here. You have limbs of an ola, have to be burnt. Limbs of the chatos cannot be burnt. So what do you do? So the Mishnah says, Rabbi says, Yitin lamala. You can put them all on the mizbeach. Meaning you burn the mizbeach, you burn the ones of the chatos also. V'roani es basar chatos memala kilein eitzim. Pretend that it's wood. I'm not burning it l'shem. Burning the carbon. I'm burning it as if it's this wood. I leave it up there as if it's wood. Then the next pasuk back in Vayikra says, "For carbon ratios Hashem." That's the bikurim. But don't burn mizbech. So he darshans this way. Okay, I'm not burning it for reich nichoach, for a pleasant smell, pleasant odor for the Rebbeinu Shalom to be maratza Hashem. I'm just burning it as if it's wood. That's all. The chomomim, no, can't do that. Tuber tzarasan, all these limbs become disfigured. In other words, let them rot. And once they're not roy anymore because they're disfigured, you burn them on the basis rate. Basis reifa means there was a place. Remember, we learned there's a makom deshen next to the kevish where he throws he removes the deshen every morning and he puts the ashes there on the east side of the kevish, about 10 amas from the bottom of the kevish. Remember, and that's also the place where he throws on the ola, the crop and the feathers. With that, he throws the ola bird there in that spot. That's makom adeshem. There's also a basis reifa. There are several basis reifas. There's like 3 more basis reifas, but there's one basis reifa in the Azara where they burn carbonates that are puzzle. They burn them there. And that's what you do here too. You can't do anything with it. It says the Chachamim. The Chachamim say that if you got ola and chatos limbs here, you can't burn the limbs because it says that kol shemenu il Hashem, anything that had something that burned on the mizbeach already, like the emur. In this case, it's the emurim. You can't burn anymore. Okay. But Rabbi Elazar darshans, no, it says El Mizbeach Lo Ya'al Reich Nichoch. I can't put them up from Mizbeach like to burn them for a sweet smell and as a nice offering to Hashem. But I could put the chatas limbs up there as if they're just wood, just to keep the fire going, that kind of a thing. All right, so that's the machlokas over here. My time Rabbi Elazar. What's Rabbi Elazar's reasoning? So we just said this pasuk. Omer, the pasuk is El Mizbeach Lo Ya'al Reich Nichoch. You shouldn't put them on the mizbeach for a pleasant smell. Can't put them You can put them up for pretend that it's wood. I'm not burning it like I'm burning the ola. The ola, I'm burning the limbs of the ola for reich nichoch Hashem. This I'm acting as if it's for wood. For Rabbanan, the Rabbanan say miyat rachmana osam. What's osam? The pasuk said karban rachis. What karban rachis? The first karban. What is that? If it's the Zion medium, like the dvash and the pomegranates on that stuff, the things that you bring, those you're supposed to bring as bikurim lashem, right? Carbon ratios like some lashem. So he says, you know what? You're not supposed to put them on the mizbeach. What do you do with bikurim? You give them to the kohen. You place them down in front of the mizbeach and give it to the kohen. And what's the carbon ratio? So if it's talking about the saor, that's the first carbon that's brought, the first carbon that's matir the chadash tfuah to be used on the mizbeach. Remember, chadash, we bring the carbon of omer is matir chadash to be eaten in the gvula outside of the azara. But in the azara, what's matir is the shtei alechem that you bring on shvuas together with the kivsei atzeres. So that's what he means over here. Carbon ratios, they have to be brought. But a mizbeach lo yalu, you don't bring it on the mizbeach, you don't burn that on the mizbeach. So Rabbanan say, mi rachman osam, that we're talking about the bikurim and the shtei alechem, osam who? Those are the ones, the atamala, you can't bring them on the mizbeach, of atamala, shem eitzim, you can bring them. Av midiachrina lo, but other things that are not the bikurim or the saor, which is the shtei alechem, those can't be brought at all. He also agrees with the idea that lo sal lo reich nichoch. You can't elam mizbeach lo yal. When the pasuk says elam mizbeach lo yal reich nichoch, that's only speaking about the bikurim and the shtei alechem. But other things can't be brought at all. For Rav Lezer, this is no. Osam, when the pasuk says karban reishis takrivu osam, that osam is also extra. Is telling you the roy bilcha kevish kemizbeach. Rav Lezer says the reason it says osam is not that those items, the bikurim and the shtei alechem, are the only things that can't be brought on the mizbeach to be burned. Osam is to tell you that just like the mizbeach is also, the kevish is also. So the kevish, which is the ram from mizbeach, has halacha like the mizbeach, because it says elam mizbeach. Elam mizbeach teaches you also including the kevish, even towards the meich. When there's the kevish, which is the ramp leading up to the mizbeach, towards the mizbeach is also asur. In other words, it's only telling you, Osam is not coming to tell you that, like the Rabbanan says. The Rabbanan says, no, Osam, only those things are the things you can't put on the mizbeach. You can't put it on the mizbeach, l'reich nichoch. You can't put it on the mizbeach, l'reich nichoch, but you could, but for eitzim you can. But other things you can't put it on all, like karbanos, like limbs of a chatas. Rav Lezer says, no, Osam is coming to tell you that when it comes to the yisur of putting the bikurim, let's say, on the mizbeach, the kevish is also included. Rabbanan, tarji shmamina. Rabbanan learned both things from there. Both that the isser of putting things on the mizbeach applies to the bikurim only, right? It applies to the bikurim only, but you could put them on for the for eitzim, but not for reich nichoach, and also that the kevish is like the mizbeach for that isser. But anything else like limbs, you can't put it at all. Now, so our Mishnah said brought down one machlokas between the Chachamim and Rabbi Lezer. If you have a mixed up a chatos and an ola limbs, what do? So Rabbi Lezer says, put it all on burn it all on the mizbeach as if it's an ola, and whatever chatos limbs are in there, you can't tell the difference once they are cut up, right? You have limbs over here, you can't tell which animal is which. So you put them on the mizbeach and you pretend they're all like an ola, and there's chatos limbs in there, pretend that's firewood. Rabbanan say you can't do that. That's also the heter, so to speak, that you couldn't put on mizbeach, but you could put on mizbeach as eitzim is only referring to the bikurim and the shtei alechem, but not to regular other animals. Before we said that it applies to everything lechem upon him, everything is included in that same rule. But before we get to the next line of the Gemara, we're about 10 lines from the bottom of the page in the Gemara. But the word masnisin, the first word in that line is masnisin. Before we get there, let's look at the next. Keep your finger there, and let's look at the next mission on the Beis. Avarim be'avarim bali mumin. Let's say you have limbs again, right? Let's say of an ola, right? That you want to burn on the mizbeach, right? Of olas, you have a lot of olas there, but there was also one animal that was a balmum that got mixed up in there too. Right? Let's say the animal, they found it to be a balmum. They couldn't tell right away. They found it to have a mum after they shechted it. And now all the limbs are there together. They pile up all the ola animals to be burnt on the mizbeach. And an ola that has a mum also got mixed up in there. Now, normally if it has a mum and you shechted it already, so you burn it by itself. But it happened, it got mixed up with the other ones. What do? So we have also machloket between Reb Lezer and the Chacham. Evarim be'evarim bali mumin. Reb Lezer Omer, we had this before. Im kar of rosh echad mehan yikavu kol harashim. Truth is, you're not supposed to burn. You have to burn the whole thing. Get rid of all of them. You can't burn it on the mizbeach. You can't be malud on the mizbeach, right? But Reb Lezer, I'll tell you what. If by mistake, let's say you had one animal that has a mum, and there were 9 other ones that didn't have a mum, and they all mixed up now. You have limbs and heads and legs all over the place. So he says, if by mistake somebody put the head of one animal on the mizbeach and burn it up there, you could do the other ones too, because you can assume that maybe the bad one was already burnt. So the other ones are okay. You burn that. You can make that assumption. We can make that assumption. We'll see the svar for that soon. Reb Lezer Omer, Reb Lezer says, Imkar of Rosh Echaban, you could do color Russian. You could do all the heads. In other words, not all the parts of the animal, but if you don't know a head, you don't know whose head it was, right? There was one balmum and there were 9 not balimum, right? So if one head went up there, you could do all the other heads because you can assume that the head that was already put on the mizbeach was the bad one. The other ones are okay, but same thing. Karayim shalechaman. If you had the legs of one of them or the leg of one of them, right? Amen. You could do all the rest of the legs because you can assume that's the bad one. Chamram, no. Afilu karvu kulam. Even if all, let's say 9 animals were all put up there, or 9 heads were up there, chutz me'echad, except for one of them, you straight. You got to burn it. You got to burn it. You can't put it on the. You can't burn it on the mizbeach, but you have to just burn it. We don't assume that the bad one was the one that was already mutter. So we have here 2 machlokas in between Reb Lezer and the Chachamim. One in a case where achatos limbs got mixed up with ola limbs, talking about after shechita, and one where balmum got mixed up with kosher ones. What do you do there? We had these 2 machlokas in. Now let's go back in the Gemara where we left off on Amar Aleph, 10 lines from the bottom of the page. Masisin lo ka'itana. This Mishnah, by the way, this is all like one long Mishnah, because remember the first Mishnah in the parak said what? That if you have, let's say, a rov and a near of an animal that bestiality was committed without Adam, of course. If the Adam, you'd kill the animal, but you can't bring it on the mizbeach. So if that got mixed up with other karbanos, what do you have to do? Wait till they all get a mum and sell them and redeem them and buy good ones with it, because you can't bring a rov and near on the mizbeach. So there, everybody agrees. Now, our Mishnah, the Gemara says like this: Masnisin lo ka'itana. Our Mishnah does not agree with the following Tana, who learns the machlokas between Reb Lezer and the Chacham differently. The Tanya, Amar Rabbi Yehuda learns like Lo nechlu Reb Lezer v'Chachamim ali b'orechata shenisar bevar ola. There's no machlokas. The Mishnah we just said, there's a machlokas between the Chacham and Reb Lezer by achatas and ola limbs that got mixed up. The machlokas sheyikavu. Everybody agrees there. He doesn't learn like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said the Chacham disagree. Chacham say you have to wait till the limbs get disfigured, and then you burn them. But you burn them not on the mizbeach. You burn them in the place of the burning place where they burn the psula mikdoshim. So there's no machlokes from the Lezer Chacham Ali Barachatz and Sarah. You can burn them. The Chacham all agree with the Lezer. But Rovan Venir v'Shleikvu. If they got mixed up with the Rovan Venir like we had in the first mission in the parak, everybody agrees you can't bring it. Where's the machlokas? Listen to this. The limbs of an unblemished animal got mixed up with the limbs of a blemished animal. Listen carefully, right? Which is the next Mishnah, right? That we just said, the Mishnah on the base. You mixed up the limbs of a blemished animal with that of a non-blemished animal, right? Shenesavru, again, Aman Echlu Alivari Ola Tmim, Shenesavru Vare Balamum. So he disagrees with this Mishnah. Does he agree with this? Does this Rabbi Yehuda also learn the Mishnah on Amid Beis differently too? L'chora, yes. Why? Rabbi Lezer Amar Yikravu. Rabbi Lezer says you can bring it as a carbon. Now, the way Rabbi Yehuda is learning, he doesn't say bring it only if one head was already put on the mizbeach and you could put the other heads. If one leg was already put on the mizbeach by mistake or by accident, whatever, you put the other ones. He just says, no, you can bring them. Rabbi Lezer Amar Yikravu, you can bring them. V'ro'ani, and I see, look at the gears on the side. V'ro'ani as basar balum. I see the basar balum lamala. I see that lamala kila and eitzim. I pretend that that's eitzim. That's okay. You can bring it all up there, just like he said in our Mishnah, right? Just like he said in our Mishnah that if you mix up a chatas with an ola limbs, you put it all on, burn it on the mizbeach as if they're an ola, and the chatas is like a wood. Here also he says, okay, you see the mum limbs as if it's wood. That's what Rabbi Lezer says. He doesn't say here at this point that only if one was already put up there. He just says, yeah, that's okay, do it up there. Like Rabbi Lezer says in our Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with, because he says that the Chachamim agree with Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah, but just like Rabbi Lezer says in this Mishnah, pretend it's wood, pretend the bad one is wood, or pretend the mixed up chatas is not a bad one, it's just mixed up, it's just intermingled. So here I pretend the Balmum is also Eitzim. The Chom Loikri can't be marked at all. You have to let all be burned. So now the Gemara says, okay, that's how Rabbi Yehuda learns the Machlokas over here. He learns our Mishnah differently, and he apparently agrees with the next. He disagrees with the next Mishnah also. The next Mishnah said we had our gear says Rabbi Lezer said if one of the heads was put up there, you could put up the other heads. He says no, you could put up there pretend the bad one is wood. For Rabbi Lezer, Maishna Rabbi Nirva Lo Chazu. Why does he agree with Rova Nirva where it's not fit to put on the mizbeach and therefore you don't bring him on the mizbeach at all, but you wait till they get a mum, etc. Balmum nami lochazu. Balmum also has a mum. So okay, so wait till the ones the balas mum also is not fit to run mizbeach. Now you don't know which one's which because we're talking about limbs over here. We're not talking about a live animal. So if it's all mixed up, you can't put it on the mizbeach. Nothing you can do is just burn everything. So why does he agree with Rova Nirva and he disagrees with Balmum? Rav Huna and Amid Beis now. Bedokin Shema'ayin. We're talking about not a real mum, something like some blemish in the cornea, or they say maybe it's cataracts, whatever. There's some blemish which is not a terrible disfigurement. Famous thing when it comes to Bali Mumin in general, you have to, even if you put him as bech, you have to take him down. Rabbi Kiva says if it's only cataracts, you could take him off you could leave him up there. So it goes like Rabbi Kiva, that a Mal Yerda. Where's like most aim with Rabbi Kiva, the Ovad. Kiva says you shouldn't put him. Everybody agrees you don't take a Baal Mum and put it on his bech. You don't offer that as a carbon on his bech. But Kiva says, well, if the only mum is a cataract or some little blemish in the eye of the animal, you can leave it up there. Okay. So Rabbi Kiva says, if you put it up there already, you don't have to take it down. But he didn't say you could put it up there. Here's what it's speaking about. This says the Balmum, if it's up there, you pretend it's wood and you leave it up there where it was already on the ramp, and the ramp has kedusha like the mizbeach. If it's already on the ramp there, you leave it up there. If that's the case, why do you have to talk about a mixture? Rabbi Kiva says you have a Balmum, right? Balmum. You're not supposed to put on mizbeach. Somebody put on his bech. Well, the only mum is a cataract. Okay, you can leave it up there. So he's talking about b'di'evet. So how can you look at it? No, it's speaking when it's on the kefish. Well, if it's on the kefish, you can leave it up there because it's like it's on the mizbech and as it's already b'di'evet. So what do you need a mixture for? You don't need if it's a bal mum is mixed with a regular one with a kosher animal even by itself. Ella, no, this doesn't make sense. Ella, time of Rabbi Lezer, mi'et rachmana mum bum. Rabbi Lezer learns it's a doraisa because the pasuk says kish mashchasor ahem mumbam. You shouldn't accept the carbon of a goy because their corruption is in there. Mumba mashchasra bahem. Pasuk says mumbam. Right? What does that mean? Bum. Who the girsa is what? Mumbam. Mumbam. He who delo yertzu. In other words, only if it's by itself. If the balmum is there by itself, you shouldn't be makrid. Taruvos, right? Mumbam hudalo yirtzu. It's not accepted as if it's by itself. You see it. That's the balmum there. Holiday terubas, but if it's a mixture, you can't tell which one's which, and it's mixed up, yirtzu. Notice he says it's learning from the pasuk of bum, as we'll see, because it doesn't say bahem, it says bum in a strange lashon. It says mashchasam bahem mumbum. Bahem and bum is the same thing. Why does it say bum? He tells you that if it's mixed up, then it's mutter. You're allowed to. In other words, Reb Lezer's reasoning is that, well, how is it different? Rova Nirva, if it's mixed up with Rova Nirva and you don't know which one's which, you can't bring it on Mizbeach, you have to sell, you have to wait till they get a mum, etc. A Baal Mum, if it's mixed up, you're allowed to put it on the Mizbeach. Even L'chachila, according to Reb Lezer, the way he's ruling Reb Lezer over here. Even L'chachila, why? Because he learns out of a pasuk. It's only if it's by itself, then it's considered, as we'll say, it's considered disrespectful, it's repulsive to put an animal that has a blemish directly on the Mizbeach. But if you can't tell, because it's mixed up with other limbs, then it's acceptable, because it says mumbum, only if it's direct, if it's by itself, hudalo yirtzu. But if it's mixed up with something else that's intermingled, you're allowed to. For Rabbanan, the Rabbanan say, mumbum hudalo yirtzu. Ha'avar mum yirtzu. What they learn is mumbum. While the mum is there, if it's a temporary, even if it's a temporary one, if it's a blemish, you shouldn't leave it up there. But if the mum was over, if it was a temporary blemish that now disappeared, right? There was the gear says of our mumam yirtzu. That's the gear in the shita. Right? Of our mumam, if the blemish has passed, it's healed, it's no longer a mum. Then that's how the Rabbanan learn. Reb Lezer mi bum bahem. The fact that it says bum instead of bahem, because the right before it says kimash chasar bahem mum bum. Why didn't it say again mum bahem? Why did it say bum? To tell you that that's different, to tell you that this is a different case. It's only if it's by itself, but if it's intermingled, it's okay. But Rabbanan bum bahem lo darshan, they don't darshan that. So they just say there's no special thing about that. It's as if it says bahem, as long as there's a mum there. If the mum has passed, then it's okay. Rabbi Lezer says it's teaching you that if it's only a mum, in other words, it's evident, you could see it, it's by itself. But if it's intermingled, then it's okay. Ihachi, why does he have to say roa? Why does he have to say, listen, in this case, right, this case that he said, and we're talking here about really the next Mishnah, but the next Mishnah we have, it is different than we have Rabbi Lezer here. He doesn't learn like our next Mishnah said, what, that if one head was already put up, you could put up the other ones also. But if, the way Rabbi Yehuda is learning the machlokas, he says, Rabbi Lezer says, no, l'chatchila. If you have Baal Mum mixed up with the limbs of Baal Mum mixed up with other animals that are not Baal Mum, you could put them on the Mizbeach, because he says the pasuk only forbids it if it's by itself, not if it's intermingled. So if that's the case, why does he have to say you could put up all of them, and I'll pretend that the Baal Mum is like wood? You don't have to pretend the Baal Mum is like wood. The pasuk is telling you beferish, according to Rabbi Lezer, that you're allowed to put it on the Mizbeach, period, because the Torah only forbids putting on the Mizbeach a Baal Mum by itself. But if it's mixed up, if it's intermingled, it's what he said, mum bum, bamu lo yitzer, ha'idei terubas, it's yirsachil, you're allowed to. Why does he have to say, okay, I'll pretend that the Baal Mum is like wood? You don't have to pretend. It's mutar lechatchila. So that's what the Gemara says. Right? Ihachi, the Gemara says, Ihachi, roa, why do you say I'll pretend, I'll look at the Baal Mum as if it's wood? Harachman Achrei, the Torah said, Hashem said that it's mutar to put it up there since it's intermingled. The answer is you're right. Rabbi Lezer was only speaking according to the Chachamim, he was telling them according to you rabbis your own reasoning. In other words, Rabbi said you have to destroy everything. That's a better word than burn, because burning is mixed up, burning on the Mizbeach, burning below. You have to destroy everything. He says, no. I mean, I hold that mum bam teaches me that only if it's by itself is the mum forbidden to put on Mizbeach. But if it's intermingled, it's okay. I hold it's mutar lechatchila. But you who say you don't agree with that svara, you don't agree with that drasha, and here you have intermingled animals, odu so at least be moted to me that what? That basar balas mum ke'etzim dami, pretend it's like wood. What's the problem? So you have a bal mum there mixed up. Why don't you it's like eitzim? Says me did they have a basar chatas, just like the basar chatas, which according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Rabbanan agreed with him. Remember what we said, Maslis lo ki'aitana. Our Mishnah says what the Chacham disagree in the case of Evar Echatas mixed up with Evar Ola. But Rabbi Yehuda says, no, everybody agrees over there that if you have Evar Echatas, Evar Ola, put it all up, burn it on the Maracha, burn it all on the fireplace on the Mizbeach, and pretend that the Evar Echatas are like wood. So just like your Moda, that the Evar Echatas is like wood, be Moda that the Baal Mum is also like wood. That's what he says. Odlami, at least we muttered that basar balas mum ke ate some dummy. Meaning you have a basar chatas. For Rabbanan say disagree. No. Hacham isi hasam lo meisi. A balmum is despicable. It's repulsive to put a balmum on the bech. It's not a nice thing. You wouldn't bring that to the president. If you came into the president of the United States and he wanted an animal, for example, you wouldn't bring him a blemished animal. It's not nice, right? Hakuvenu lav chasecha. Hayirtzu, we accept your carbon like we had in Haftorah a week ago, right? So Rabbanan hacham isi hasam lo meisi, but the chatas limbs are not disrespectful. They're not. It's not repulsive to bring chatas birds. That it was a good carbon, except that it's got mixed up with the ola. We don't know which one's which. That's what he learns the machlokas. Some say that the truth is, if the chum is a matter, the whole according to this sheet of Rabbi Lezer, that he's matter the whole thing, a mixture of any size. In other words, a mixture even 1-to-1, because the char you could say if it's 2 against 1. Let's say you had 2 against 1 or 9 against 1, 9 kosher and unblemished animals, and 1 blemished animal. You could say it's a batal barov. You could say also you could have that svara batal barov. But even if it's 1 against 1, you say when it's not batal barov, you have this svara also. So we have this machlokas. Now we're going to say the same mishnah we saw before, but we're going to have a different version of it. The version not like Rabbi Yehuda. Evarim be'evarim bali mumin. We had this Gemara, we had the sheet of Elazar before. If you have, again, evarim of kosher limbs, unblemished limbs, mixed up with evarim of a balmum, Rabbi Lezer Omer imkar rosh echad man. If by mistake, by accident, they already sacrificed the head of one of them, you could call rosh. You could do all the heads. Karam shel echad man, the feet of one of them, you could call them. In the Mishnah it says kera, one leg, even one leg. You can assume that all the legs were that all the legs of, maybe the way our Mishnah reads it, it's kara'ayim, only have 4 legs, right? We're talking about 4-legged animals, so maybe it means if you had 4 legs put on the mizbech, you could assume those were the bad ones. If it was only 1 or 2 or 3 legs, then still you have one of the bad legs is still in, it hasn't been brought up. So maybe it means only if all the legs are up there. But Chacham Omrim, Chacham say, afilu karvu kulam chutz me'echad. No, even if you brought, let's say you had 9 kosher animals, unblemished, and one was blemished. He says even if 9 and they got mixed up, even if 9 animals were put on the mizbech or 9 heads, and you only have one left, you got to burn the other one. You got to destroy the other one. Again, use that word destroy. Pardon? Incinerate. Yeah, incinerate all the other ones. Yeah, incinerate sounds.
That's like destroy.
That's really destroyed, right? Incinerator, right? Put it in the incinerator, right? It's not an incinerator. So, okay. Amar Rabbi Lezer. Now. Amr Rabbi Elazar, this is Rabbi Elazar explaining Rabbi Eliezer. Amr Rabbi Elazar, Loch Rabbi Elazar, Shnaim. We had the sheet before also. In other words, even in our Mishnah, which is not the way Rabbi Yehuda learned his sheet. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda learned the Rabbi Elazar sheet is that if it's mixed up polymomen, the Torah says you're allowed to. He says no. Our Mishnah says no. If one of them was put up already, assume that's the bad one, so you could put the other ones up now. Let's say again, when you have, let's say 1 blemished animal got mixed up with 9 unblemished animals, the limbs are all mixed up over here. So Rabbi Lezer said in our Mishnah, not the way Rabbi Yehuda learns, but the way Rabbi Lezer says in our Mishnah, if 1 head was put on the mizbech by mistake, put up the other 9, because we'll assume that's the bad one, right? If 1 set of legs was put up there, we'll assume those are the bad ones. So even when you say you could put up the other ones, when you're putting up the other ones, let's say you have 9 other ones, you got to put up 2 at a time. Why? We're assuming maybe the bad one's up there already, but even when you're being makram, put up 2 at a time. Why? Because if you know you have 1 bad one mixed up with 9 good ones, you're assuming that the bad one, and somebody put 1 on top of the mizbech already, so you assume the other 9 are the good ones. We don't really know if the other 9 are good ones. The odds are that the bad one is in the 9, right? So you always put up 2 at a time. But as you can put all 9 up at one time, but you can't put up 1 at a time, 2 at a time, because if you put up 2 at a time, one of the ones that you're putting up is a good one. Understand? One of them is a good one, so you assume that at least one of them is good. Masar Rav Yirmi, what do you mean? The Chamam, the end of the Mishnah said, "Afilu karper kulan." Even if all 9 were put up, even if all total of 9, chutz me'echim, except for one of them, yesh lebeis sreifa, and it's mashma the what? The Rabbi Elazar says no. You could put them all up there, even if it's only 1. Rav Yirmi b'tachlifa, I'll tell you what it is. No, az b'lecha ma'yechad zugech. It means 1 pair. But Rabbi Elazar would agree that if what you had 10. And somebody put up 1 head, you could put up the other 9. Well, if you put up all the other 9 at one shot, that's okay. but you always have to have 2 at a time. So if you put up 8 out of the 9 and you have 1 remaining, you can't put that up anymore because you got to do 2 at a time. This way you know that one of them, what you're being makriv now, at least one of them is good. But if you had all 9 out of 10 are already up on the mizbeach, you can't put up the 10th one according to the way Rabbi Elazar explains Rabbi Eliezer. Again, if it's if it in a case like it depends on how many you're talking about. If there was only 2 animals that got mixed up, let's say 2 animals got mixed up, according to where Rabbi Elazar is explaining Rabbi Eliezer, in other words, one was a balmum, one was not a balmum, right? The Chacham say you got to destroy everything, right? And Rabbi Eliezer said, well, if one head was put up, you can put up the other one. Well, that wouldn't go with Rabbi Eliezer because Rabbi Eliezer says you only got to put up 2 at a time. If there's only 1 remaining, that might be the bad one. So you can't put up that. Then according to Rabbi Eliezer, if you only had 2 animals, 1 good and 1 bad, there's no solution. You have to destroy the one that's not up there. And everybody, even the way our Mishnah reads, even Rabbi Elazar agrees that if no one put up the first one by accident, if the head wasn't put up by accident, you can't do anything. Not like Rav Yehuda learned Rabbi Elazar. The next Mishnah, dam shenasar b'mayim. Now let's say you have the dam of a carbon, right? You're ready to sprinkle the dam. You did the shchita kabbalah halacha, and you're about to do the zrika, and it got mixed up with some water. Is that okay? All right. What do you do? Im yesh bo marsam. If it looks like dam kosher, if it looks like blood, it's reddish. It's got a tint of red. Even if there's a lot more water than dam. The dam was, let's say, whatever, you had a cup and somebody had a whole gallon of water in a big receptacle and it stuff. If it's got the look of blood, it's kosher. This our biyayin, now let's say it got mixed up with red wine. They didn't have much white wine in those days. Maybe they did, but usually the wine's like Alteira yayin ki adom, right? Red is, when we talk about wine is red wine. So now it's got the same color as the blood, right? So how can you tell? So it says, Nisar biyayin ron asakilu humayim. We pretend that the wine is also water, and if it would be water, would you be able to see the color of the dam? If you could, that's okay too. Okay. Nisar of bedam behema or bedam achaya. Let's say it got mixed up with the dam of an animal of chulin, another animal, right? Or dam achaya, where it's dam and dam. Now, how can you tell? Also, ron asakilu humayim. In other words, if it got mixed up with water, if it got mixed up with wine, if it got mixed up with other dam, with dam of stam chulin of a chaya, which is always a chulin, a chaya can never be a carbon, because a carbon has to be a 4-legged animal, has to be a short kesef ways, not a chaya. Okay, these are all, it's kosher, but again, you pretend it's water. If it would be water, would you be able to see the color of dam? Yes. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Rabbi Yehuda says, ein dam avatal dam. So he says like this. In other words, the Tanakama says, if it has the appearance of blood, and even if it doesn't have the appearance of blood because it's mixed up with wine or with other blood, plain blood of a regular animal, and you can't tell by the color, but you pretend as if it would be water, it would be good enough. If you could tell, then it's good enough. Even if there's more water or more of the other dam or more wine, but if you'd be able to see the color of the blood, had it all been water, had the mixture that you added in there been water, would you be able to see the color of the blood? Then it's okay. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Even if you couldn't be able to tell, he says, Rabbi Yehuda goes with the shita throughout Shas, and we don't hold like him, but he holds that min b'mino was never bottled. So he says, listen, even if you had just a few drops of blood of this animal, and it got mixed up with a ton of other blood, a ton of other wine, even if it would be water, you wouldn't be able to tell the color of the blood. Dam is never bottled. Even if you wouldn't be able to tell it. Rashi says, "Ein dam v'atam." The last Rashi, the min b'mina lo batal. That's a shita throughout Shas. V'afilu tipa l'toch kli gadol kashos rika. Even if you had a blood of kosher carbon dam, got mixed up with a ton of water, and you can't even see you can't see red anymore. It's not red. Got mixed up with so much water over there that you can't see any red at all. It's still kosher because he says dam is never bought. Because min b'mino is never bought. That's his shita. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ein dam v'atal dam. Nisar b'dam psulin. Now, let's say when they're doing all the avodah-based meetings, everybody always asks us a carbon pesach. There's millions of karbanos. Everything's brought. A lot of karbanos become possible. Maybe there was a mum. Maybe something happened. He made a mistake in the shechita, whatever. So let's say it got mixed up with the dam of a puzzle animal. Now, we just said if it's mixed up with the dam of a kosher animal, but it's not a carbon, it's a chaya, it's chulin or whatever, with wine, whatever, that's okay, right? According to Rabbi Yehuda, even if you can't tell the color, it's okay because min is a batal. Let's say it got mixed up with the dam of psulim. Yishapachim's got to be destroyed. Okay, this is not incinerated. You pour it down the drain. There was a channel running through the base of Mikdash. Besides the two holes at the southwest corner of the Mizbeach where you're supposed to put the Shiur Adam, those holes also went down to Nachal Kidron and had a channel. But there was a general channel. There was a big channel, like a pipe of that where a drain. Think of it as a drain throughout the Azara where things that were puzzle went. Remember, what they did is on Erev Pesach, they stopped up. They put a stopper on the plug. They plugged up the drain so that the Kohanim would walk in blood up to their ankles or up to their knees, to show that they love what they're doing, right? So the Sarbadam Sulin, Yishabach Lama, not because it's really puzzle, as we'll see, it's Xera, because it's Xera that people shouldn't think it's kosher to do the dam, to sprinkle dam sulin. So he says, Sarbadam Sulin, Yishabach Lama. Bedama Tamsis. Tamsis means the blood that's not the lifeblood, it's the blood that's squeezed out later on, the draining blood of the animal. That's also no good. Also, Yishapach Lama. Rabbi Lazar Machshur in that case, because that's a mislo shchicha, because there's not that much blood. The draining blood is not much, but there's a lot of dam sulim. So they made Xera, and Rabbi Lazar agrees with Xera too, except he doesn't agree in the case of the dam tamsis, because there's no reason to make Xera there, because there's not that much of it. Imlo nimlach, but everybody agrees that if they didn't ask, he just had a cup of dam, and so some dam of a puzzle animal became mixed up with evanasa, and it's also kosher. In other words, just like we saw with the other cases, if the dam got mixed up with water or with wine or with animals that are not even carbonos, it's okay. So here, if it got mixed up with an animal that was a carbon, it was kachim, but it got puzzle, technically it's okay. That's why if you didn't ask, it's okay too. It's just l'chadchila we say you should pour that water out, pour it down the drain, that people shouldn't come to think that dam of a puzzle is mutar l'chadchila to sprinkle on the mizbeach. All right, we'll pick up from here tomorrow. Mitzvah Shem from the Gemara.
Yeah.
Shavua tov l'kulam.
Shavua tov.